Hello, everybody. Welcome, everybody, and thank you very much for logging in. We're here to talk about great meetings and not so great meetings and how to make meetings better. My name is Gabriele. I work at Doodle. We are all about making great meetings happen. And I'm joined today by Sankalp Chaturvedi. He's an associate professor of organizational behavior and leadership at Imperial College in London. The reason why we set this webinar up is because we are so passionate about making great meetings happen, and because we studied what actually does make great meetings happen in our State of the Meeting report. And it's all about having more impact and having more efficient meetings. And we surveyed over 6,000 people. We also analyzed millions and millions of meetings, 19 millions actually, of meetings that have been scheduled through Doodle in the Doodle platform, and worked with academics like Sankalp to make sense of these analysis and really finding out what makes meetings more efficient and how can we make them more efficient going forward. So today we're looking at some of the results, and it's going to be exciting to see how we can all make our lives better and better meetings in that. So first, I'd like to talk a little bit about Doodle as well. So we are a scheduling company. We are been around for more than 10 years now, 12 almost now. And the company has been founded in Zurich, where we still have our headquarters, 12 years ago. And over the last 12 years, it's steadily grown. We now have last year organized or scheduled more than 30 million meetings through Doodle on a very wide range of use cases. So both, your private barbecue or bachelorette party, but also business meetings, board meetings, kickoff, project meetings, all types of meetings. And so the growth is going on. And over the last year, other than the 30 million meetings that have been scheduled, we've had more than 200 million people using our product in one way or another, both at creating or scheduling or in participating in one of the meetings. So that's 6 per second if you're counting, if you like a little bit of math like I do. And so that's a lot of meetings right there. And that's also the ground material on which we based our analysis. So, when you ask people about meetings, many of them really react, oh, no, not another meeting. Or how can we make meetings, suck less life out of our bodies when we are in them? And so, how can we achieve that? And how can we also achieve, decrease the money that is spent and wasted in useless meetings? Our report says $500 billion are wasted on useless meetings just in the main markets where Doodle is used. So there's really a big need there to make that more efficient and less soul-sucking. And so, Sankalp will tell us a little bit more about what we found out in the report. And yeah, I'll hand over to Sankalp.
Thanks, Gabriele. First of all, welcome all of you who are joining this webinar. It's a pleasure to be involved in this something very important meeting in that sense. We wanted to utilize this opportunity to talk to you about team and team meetings. And my role here as a faculty here at the Imperial College Business School, I do research on teams and team trust and leadership in teams, and trying to understand how do we make sure that the purpose of teams is actually utilized. When we say teams, I call them together everyone achieves more. But the question is, do they, how do they, when we can say that teams potential is utilized? Because teams and team meetings are a very, very important tool for the leaders of the companies to start thinking about coordinating, consulting with the people itself. However, when the report like what Doodle has come up with, it seems like we are not utilizing the real potential of what team meetings can actually do. There are lots of things to come into play. When we talk about effective communication in leadership, the idea of three things matter when you're trying to communicate effectively with your followers itself or your team members itself come into play. Face-to-face interaction, yes, is considered to be important and most trustworthy because there are three components associated with effective communication, which revolves around the content, that is the choice of words, the tone of how you speak, and finally the body language itself. And if you're not trying to understand these questions altogether, it's very, very hard for people to be coherent. So when we think about team meetings and its purpose, it's important that we try to understand, first of all, do we need one? Is there a significant purpose for the meeting? And if so, what is the mode of communication that I want to use? What this report brings into picture, which is also proved by trust research, is meeting in person is considered to be the best mode of communication itself. Obviously, there is emails, sorry, video meetings, you have emails. There are different ways in how you can actually communicate with people. But the question is the meeting purpose to build a relationship between the people, or is it about the information sharing itself? If it's the information sharing itself, it's better to do it via email. Obviously, if you're trying to think about trying to give some information, emails is good. But if you're calling a meeting just for the purpose of sharing the information, I don't think we need a team meeting there. Team meeting again has to have a purpose itself. And the meetings report that has come out, it seems like they have tested this from the data from US, UK, Germany, and Switzerland itself, and quite a few distribution from males, females from both domains. And it's consistently clear that we got to match what we actually want to do, the meeting itself, and what mode of communication do we actually plan to do it itself. And the most effective is definitely meeting in person itself. And when we look a little bit more closer, how much time people actually lose in those waste or pointless meetings, we need to think about how do we get points to pointless meetings, because pointless meetings we waste so much money itself, because what we do, which Gabriele was trying to hint at, we are actually wasting over 540 billion US dollars a year, which is a significant time for any company, any leaders to actually expend on. And this does not even include the facility cost or the logistical challenges that people actually have to incur itself. What we see, they have taken some of the salary data to start giving it some sort of indication, which is very, very expensive itself. And when you look at the data itself, it seems like professionals on an average spend 3 hours a week in meetings. And out of that, 2/3, that is 2 hours a week, is actually on pointless meetings. And please note that this is based on the data provided by people themselves. So if people believe that they are part of the useless meetings, what does happen to their motivation itself? Because that is a cause of worry for not only the leaders, but the organizations who actually want meetings to happen itself. So it's very, very important that we start thinking about giving team or meeting decorum itself a skill to be made sure that more people understand it, and they're organizing to make sure that we can actually think about meetings that are very, very powerful tools which we can use for consultation itself. I did mention the involvement of purpose. Team meetings need to be adjusted to the purpose of the meeting. If it's a social cause, yes, relationship bonding is going to be effective. But if we are come to a meeting with a purpose and we are doing exactly the opposite, then that's a wasting the time itself. And how many people are actually coming to those meaningless meetings where it is causing a little bit more problem?
All right. Seems like Sankalp is down on his end of the internet connection. We're trying to make sure that that we get him up online again. Thanks to everybody for just holding a second. So another proof that face-to-face meetings are the real thing. You don't have to really rely on the internet connection, but give us just another minute and we'll sort it out. That's a very good question. So Jim is asking, how much time is lost by technical glitches? So we are running Doodle quite often. We're running it remotely. So we are in video conferences all the time. And when you have 5 people in a meeting and you need the first 5 minutes to sort out what is actually the video connection, that's already 25 minutes gone right there, and nobody has done anything. So yeah, we haven't gone to the bottom of that, but that's definitely one that is a huge source of lost time.
Yeah.
All right.
Sorry. I was talking about the importance of agenda. The idea that agenda needs to be very clear, and that has to be done before the meeting starts. And when we're trying to talk about agenda itself, it's important that we think about whether it matches with the amount of time we have. Sometimes people end up trying to talk about 10 different things in the agenda, but when reality comes into play, they end up talking about 2 or 3 of them. The importance of making sure that these meetings are actually matched. If 3 things needed consultation of different people, it's very, very important that we just talk about 2 or 3 of them itself. And what you realize that many people are not prepared before they come to the meeting. So that's something which can actually be helpful, that people come with a plan before the meeting starts itself. Because if they are not planned, prepared, what has happened? People start doing irritating things which are not part of the team meetings, which is not required, but people start taking phone calls, they are not listening, irrelevant people are coming and going, and they don't care about what has been discussed itself. We need to give people a purpose when they come to meeting. And if consultation is what leaders want, we want to make sure that everyone's opinion actually is contributed to the team discussion itself. You will realize that some of the people, because they are not trained in these team skills, meeting skills, they do not realize how hierarchy changes the team dynamics itself. If leader speaks on an opinion, there are higher chances that people do not argue or contribute to the discussion itself, because leader has spoken the will and has given an indication to the team members itself. We also need to think about personality, how personality of different individuals come into play when they are trying to contribute in a meeting. We do not want to be giving an impression that their contributions, the consultations do not matter. Because leadership, followers, teams, everyone, they realize that authentic leadership, that is something what people say and what they do is consistent or not. And if we are trying to make sure that it's structured well, people are prepared, they are more likely to be engaged in the discussion itself. So we need to make sure that we give different ways and how we actually go about doing it. What we realize, lots of people, because of this, meetings are not organized poorly, people actually are very upset and they do not motivate or contribute as much as we would like them to. Because they say, because of the purely organized meetings, they do not have enough time to work on the things that matter to them. It's not clear that some of the actions taken are not clear who is going to do who, because lots of people are there in the meetings and nobody's taking ownership or the follow-up itself. People lose focus, and that is also happening because sometimes there are irrelevant people who are not contributing in the meetings, but they are still there just for the sake of being in the team meeting itself. So we need to think about how do we organize meetings that can actually be very useful. So something for all of us in the organizations, consultations need to make field people better itself. So it is important, as I said, to start thinking about why do we need a meeting, think about who should attend these meetings, and how we want to make sure that people with different personalities and different level of hierarchies can contribute to the discussion itself. Gabriel, you want to take someone?
Yeah, so I mean, I started with this in the intro already, and you can see here how much meetings cost us all in the business setting. So it's a staggering $500 billion, so $540 billion every year that we spend in useless meetings. And you know, obviously, we somewhere deep down we all already knew that, and we all have had this experience of being in a meeting where, you know, the most important person maybe that has the most relevant information is not there, or the person who can decide is not there, or it's just poorly organized, as Sankalp said before, with no agenda and nobody really prepared. So that's the huge consequence, and also the huge opportunity for us all to make meetings better and to really make us feel more productive as well, and the workplace, and keep the motivation high, and not, you know, think about every invitation. Hey, why do we need another meeting?
Yes,
right?
no, it totally makes sense. And this figures that you have come up with is mind-boggling to me. People like me who are doing research on this obviously need to take a little bit more careful look at it. But if you think about that, this is just based on salary figures that you have. If you're trying to look at the amount of travel expenses, facility cost, obviously it's going to be much more than it is actually you are indicating. And these are only 4 countries we are talking about here, not even the whole world in that sense. So it is some skill that we need to work with.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing that I always think about is, you know, what could you have done in this time other than sitting in that meeting, right? You could have made a major contribution to your company's work. The other thing that I hear very often from our engineers is that often meeting time cuts into their focus time, right? It's not only the time you lose during the meeting, it's also that it cuts your day into pieces, and you don't have this long spans of focus time anymore, and that must be even more lost lost productivity in the business setting.
And think of that amount of time people actually start doing multitasking at work, right? Imagine how much, because we have told initially that multitasking is good. People are on their mobile phones all the time while they're talking to somebody else. So how much attention can you actually give on something that is being discussed itself? People are trained cognitively. We know by research that we can do one thing at a time. We can't do multitasking when it comes to a cognitive task. If people are actually lacking on that, you will realize that people are looking at you, smiling at you, but thinking about something else completely. I'm looking at my mobile, what next meeting is going to be about, who am I going to meet, what I'm going to do. So cognitively, even if we think that we can think about past, present, and future at the same time, unfortunately, that's not something that we know from research. Cognitively, we can do only one thing at a time. What we need to think about is to create this, what we call as task switching mindset. So decide a task that this time I want to have this meeting, and next meeting half an hour for this meeting and half an hour for next one. We should not think about the spillover between one task to another task, because that's also be very expensive. When you have a meeting, you would want all your leaders and team members to be in the meeting itself. They're not thinking about issues that are beyond the focus of the meeting itself. So it gets very tricky actually of how do we make people to start thinking about with a focused purpose to the points that are actually going to add value to the discussion itself. So something important to think about overall.
Absolutely, and I think I've been guilty of this as anybody else, of going into the meeting and having your head or your eyes somewhere else, right? And so I think what is crazy about these numbers is that we are talking here about sort of the average business professional. But if you look at a more core segment of these people, what we call busy professionals with 5 or more meetings, or even 15 or more meetings a week, these people, if you think that you have 15 meetings a week and 2/3 of them are essentially a waste of time, that's really almost that's a tragedy, right? And so looking at the markets we've looked at, is about 30% in the UK, 23% in Germany, and in the US are in this category of busy professionals with more than 5 meetings a week. And for them, again, this waste of time is really incredible. And in the UK alone, that's 10 million people, right? And how can we make meetings more useful for these people? These are people, in middle management, team leads, and so on. So it's regular, business workers, and they just spend hours on end on things that are not really useful.
No, there is, as I said, lots of think about, and what we see here, busy professionals are actually trying to do it. They think it's lots of relevant people are missing, probably attending other meetings. They're not in the meetings when they're required to be, because again, lots of challenges come into play. Physically, they cannot be in multiple places. There's also structural challenges, because you cannot do more meetings with the same person multiple times. And obviously, psychologically, because they have done too many things, too many people cannot be getting involved in this thing as well. So when people ask this question, what are the aspects of improperly staffed meetings? What are the negative impact itself? You realize that they think that there are too many people in the meetings who are not required in the meetings. What we also know from the busy professionals, that relevant people are missing, which is also kind of a chaos. And this difference seems like a very significant difference for me, because when you're thinking about matching purpose to the people in the meeting, you got to have some sort of a matching or fit between the two itself, which I think it's actually lacking here as well.
But yeah, really, it doesn't have to be this way, right? I think if we all make an effort and take the process seriously, we can have effective and well-organized meetings that benefit your day and benefit the business that you're working for and working with, and bring you forward. So really, I think the next question is, how can we make meetings more effective and more well organized? And again, right here, the secret really of a successful and time efficient meeting is the preparation. The agenda shouldn't be too long. It should include what are you trying to achieve. It should include the goals of the meeting and specific detail on the subjects and time allocation. So that's a quote from you, Sankalp. Maybe you want to...
Well, in this context, I can tell you that it seems like a multi-billion-dollar question, literally, because unless we plan these things, and since the start, I have said that the intention of having a focused purpose, you need to know what you want to do with a team meeting. If you realize that you don't want your members' discussion or consultation at all, you want to do it quickly, let leader decide. If you want a consultation for the thing that you don't know about and you think you want to maximize the probability of doing it, then the question relies on finding the relevant people who can actually contribute to the discussion itself. The idea of team meetings is not to make sure that you're listening to everyone. The idea goes beyond listening itself. Get the information from as many people as possible, where they are not afraid to speak up, which is a contrary view to the leader. When there are more people, their personality is not impacted, so extroverts are not taking over the building itself, the meeting itself, but it's introverts who have brilliant ideas to talk about, can talk about it as well, and they are involved. And leaders have a very, very important role to play. People who are scheduling the meetings are different ones than who are actually going to be contributing. So the idea is people can schedule, but people who really want the meetings to happen, they need to think about every specific detail. What are the points that I need to talk about? How I'm going to get right people in the place, and how I will make sure that there will be a follow-up attached to that discussion itself. Because people need to be motivated. If they feel that the consultations are fake, they will disengage. And some people will be angry and they will start talking about different things because they were not involved in the discussion itself. So leaders have a responsibility not only to themselves to think about how do they get skills which can actually make them effective and efficient, because time is money. We talked about that with the purpose, but unless we have a structured way of trying to put together different people, different skills, I think we are wasting time, and we don't need to. If the purpose is again social relationships building, because that helps in collegiality of the colleagues, why not? But we need to be consistent with what we want to say and what we want to do. And as soon as we are trying to do that, we can actually start making it useful. And when I talk about these things, I always ask everyone else to think about 6 questions to start thinking about better planned, organized meetings. The first and foremost question that everyone should think about, is the meeting needed? If the meeting is needed, consultation is needed, that means you're assuming that you have sufficient time to gather information, to listen to people, to make sure that they're prepared before they come in. That meeting, if needed, you have to have clear goals established way ahead of time. When we try to schedule a meeting, we say, this is the title of the meeting without giving description sometime. What do we want to achieve in this meeting? So if the goals are mentioned in the planning state itself, people who are getting that invite, they know that, yes, this is something that I can contribute in. My leader actually believes that I can do something about it. That's why they are asking for my opinion in this deal itself. If there is an agenda which is specified in that one, then you have to start thinking about, okay, now what are the materials that people need to understand the complete picture from leadership's point of view? Because leadership is a challenge. Many times followers do not understand why leaders are doing well. So if you can start explaining the why, the procedures aspect, they are more likely to be attached to the agenda. They will take it seriously and they will come prepared for the agenda itself. And as I said earlier, having right participants is very, very crucial. Because if you are trying to get people who are going to say yes, 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 without any discussion, it's going to be a problem. Because you're not trying to discuss. The potential of having team meetings involves around having this sort of a cognitive conflict associated, whereas people are discussing ideas. And it's okay to disagree with ideas, even, and we say that don't be disagreeable, because the policy has been made by leader that I want to have an open discussion itself. There are going to be some introvert people or people who are going to be quieter. It's leader's responsibility to make sure that those people are pulled into the discussion itself. Let personality not rule the ideas itself. There are people who will have brilliant ideas, even though they are quiet, because they might be afraid of the hierarchy being in the room, or there is a possibility that it's not them to talk too much like extroverts will do. So we need to think about a strategy of how do we make it happen itself. From structural point of view, the people organizing this thing itself, it's very important. Which kind of a technology do we want for this meeting? If it's something very sensitive nature, having a face-to-face meetings is far better than trying to do it with some of the other technological tools that we have in play. Because the trust that we are talking about for building teams and working with people is essential to talk about sensitive stuff. If you're doing it video conferencing, again, people can be distracted. I can be looking at you, but on the camera, but I know that my mobile is 2 mobiles, my kids are around, my helpers are around, and we are not able to focus on the things that we really want to focus on. So you have to think about a mode of communication attached to the purpose itself. And like anything else, preparation during the meeting, but we also need to make sure that there is a proper closing to the discussions. If people do not know who is going to take care of which element of the agenda items, they will still think that the division of labor that the teams are known for is not decided. So they might start playing passing the buck game, that you do it, I assumed you will said it, you will do it, I said it, and I will do it. So there has to be some sort of follow-up association on how we want to make sure that people take it to the next stage and get involved in the team meetings itself. Yeah? Over to you, Gabriel.
Yeah, so we are not alone in all of this, and there are tools to make your scheduling life easier. And I refer here, for example, to Brenda, who just asked. She was hoping to learn a little bit more how to use Doodle in her Outlook and MS Teams. So Brenda, for you, stay tuned. We're working on stuff for Outlook, and we do have a bot actually in MS Teams. But for other than that, our most important tool really for the scheduling bit, at least, of the meeting, not the meeting itself, is the calendar. And if you look at today's calendars, there's still very much just an empty box that you put your meetings into. They don't really help you very often in prioritizing and making sure that the right people are in the meeting, or that you can reschedule smartly, and so on and so forth. And so there's still a lot of work to do on the calendaring side and on the scheduling side, and we, at least at Doodle, are hoping to play a really major role in that. Some of the hacks I use to make, at least with today's tool, my calendar more useful is, have it send a day summary ahead of time to me. So in the morning, when I open my email, or actually my messenger, I have my full agenda in it, and says, okay, these are the meetings that you are in it today. And you can do something like that by yourself with some of these tools that create something after you create something else. So if this then that, or Zapier are very powerful tools to automate stuff and have you send your agenda to yourself. Another one that I like is some calendar software. They give you a context of your day. So even if it's just the weather, so what kind of jacket should I take with me, and so on and so forth. But also how many meetings do I have today? Is it going to be a busy day or not? Sort of like a heat map that some calendar software can show you. Now, if you look at a little bit at the wider spectrum of productivity tools, I'm obviously working at Doodle. I'm a productivity geek, if you want, and I've probably used all of the to-do lists out there. Starting from OmniFocus, a Mac-based thing, Wunderlist, Toodle-Do, whoever thought about this named, right? Todoist, Remember to Milk, Apple reminders, everything, right? And finally, I settled for Things, which is a nice suite of tools that works well for me because I'm an Apple aficionado, so they really only work on Apple, but it's native built tools and very nice interaction, very well designed tools. So for me, on the to-do side, it's Things. Now, on the calendar side, I haven't really settled yet. I mean, I did settle, obviously, for a combination of tools, but it's a space I feel where there's much more space still for innovation. So I've used them all. Apple Calendar, Sunrise Calendar. That's one I'm really still shedding a tear for. Even after 2 or 3 years, they retired their app. They had some really nifty features that again we hope to resurrect as well at Doodle. Obviously, the Google Calendar online version, Fantastical, is great if you want to enter your stuff in natural language and have the calendar understand what you wanna schedule. I myself, in the end, settled for the Doodle bot, our smart bot that that really helps you automatically schedule, and our Chrome extension that does the same. As you add people, it scans through the different calendars that those people, if they did it, connected their calendar and surfaces the best slot to meet, and takes into account of time zones, working hours. Really nifty, and in conjunction with Google Calendar, obviously. And I recently found another tool that is interesting, that is trying to maximize focus time, as I said before, and starts moving around events automatically to sort of increase your focus time. So I only just started testing that out. I'll tell you at some point later how successfully it went for me. Still, scheduling is a pain. So we still have a very, very big reason for being. And again, stay tuned. We've got a lot of things up for it. So because scheduling is still a huge pain, we are working on it, and I'm really getting up in the morning with this motivation of really making a difference in people's life. And so we've obviously started at Doodle with finding a time for a large group, and that's our most used and most well-known product. And so for that, actually, you don't even need a calendar, right? You can just enter your time slots, send it out to your friends or business partners, and they can just fill it out, and boom, you have your meeting. Now, even in a one-on-one setting, when you're only just talking with one person, it can very quickly get into an email ping pong, and that's where we saw our next opportunity to sort of round out our suite of scheduling tool, and that's our Doodle one-to-one tool. So essentially, you get a view of your own calendar, you choose some slots that are good for you, we create a link out of that, and off you send this link to your person you want to meet. And on the other side, the person just needs to do one click, and it directly goes into both calendars. And so there's loads of things like that we're working on. Rescheduling, again, a huge pain. Recurring meetings. How do you make sure that if you want to have a recurring meeting, that time slot is actually available over the next weeks? So we have some tools working on that as well, where you say, hey, I want this meeting to be recurring, and we'll calculate for the 7 next weeks or 7 next instances which one is actually the best slot that you should try and get to the other people. And so that's where all of this artificial intelligence also comes to play. So we're trying to be smarter and smarter about how Doodle schedules, and so there we are working on algorithms that really should, in the long term, make it possible for you to have your agenda or your calendar in autopilot mode. And in the end, that's what people used to have in the higher positions with an assistant. And what we really, in the end, with this autopilot hope to achieve is that everybody can get one. It's democratic, and you can just trust Doodle to make sure that you are at the right place in the right time.
This is something very interesting, because when you're talking about fixing time, there's an aspect of cultural expectations coming into play. Because again, when you're thinking about scheduling, what we find in that report, which was highlighted, I found it very interesting actually. They're the top 3 countries in terms of respondents to confirm or decline meetings. Obviously, the top 3 are Italy, Poland, and Israel. And bottom 3 comes into as France, Switzerland, and Sweden. And for people who are listening, UK comes to be around the 5th slowest at 9 hours and 27 minutes. That says something about the kind of a proxy to how busy we are as well. But it is something to think about, because these are the cultural norms that are defining their own behaviors. If we do expect people, and just so that you remember, we're talking about 19 million meetings, and the power of data and the strength of the mean itself shows that this is something, a cultural norm, and there's a significant differences of what people expect itself. So if you can find ways to match those cultural expectations, not only in getting the meeting scheduled, but also to think about how far they are trying to be planned so that we can have a proper meeting itself. So this is an important data to think about. How do we configure and how do we make sure things happen itself? One of the things that I was reading in the messages, I saw a person called Lorna mentioning about the 6th question and whether it's common sense. Just so that make a point there, common sense is not common. If that was common, we wouldn't be wasting so much money on inefficient meetings. We need to think about that. People need to have skills to do it, to think about what is logical, what is rational, so that we utilize the time we are together itself. And everyone's time is actually useful, because it's coming out of that one, the work hours that we are actually being paid for. So something to think about when we think about meetings and efficient and effective meetings itself.
Yeah. So summarizing this webinar, I mean, one thing we all know for sure, and with all of the talk about useless meetings, I'm sure we all remember those really powerful meetings that really make align an entire team, or make where you have this aha moment together with your team. So real-time meetings are very powerful, but all too often they are not very well organized. So proper planning, bringing the right people at the right time together and having the relevant information is really, really important. And so how can we get there? So one, it's obviously each and every one of us needs to take that seriously and come into the meeting prepared, and prepare it ahead of the time if you're the one person organizing the meeting. But there is also tools that can help you. So you can help, can help you with smart scheduling as well, to free up some time in the scheduling for actually preparing the meeting, right? It shouldn't be the case that you spend hours on end scheduling the meeting and then not have time in your day to actually prepare and make a meaningful meeting happen. So hopefully you've all learned a little bit about how to make meetings more efficient, how to tackle this big waste of time and money that we have in today's business life. And yeah, with that, I'd like to thank you all, and I'd obviously like to thank Sankalp for his interesting insights, and for taking putting the report a little bit into context, also in terms of leadership and organizational behavior, how that all fits into the structure of a team. So yeah, thank you all. And for those who haven't seen it in the chat, we'll obviously make those slides available, make the video recording available. Sorry again for those that haven't had a great audio experience. The video will be there, and you can have the full experience in there. Yeah, so thanks again.
Thank you, Gabriel. It was fun, and it's a pleasure. So yeah, I look forward to efficient meetings, and thanks to you guys to make it happen. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. We'll make the best of it.
Thank you.
Thank you.